Welcome to the one and only, the one and only series that we're starting for the next 3 weeks. All right, so how many of you guys have ever been obsessed with something before? What was that thing? I know it's Justin Bieber. I knew you were going to say that, Justin Bieber. What else? Other obsessions you have? What?
Gru.
What?
Gru.
Like from Despicable Me, Gru?
Yeah.
Like long nose? Like talks like this, Gru. He talks like this. That was actually spot on, yes. I hired for next Disney movie. I like it. All right, what else? Obsessions. Shout them out. Video games. Okay, what else? What? Q-tips? You're obsessed with Q-tips. You know that's extremely bad for cleaning your ears, right? Chapstick. Okay? Yep. Can you guys guess what one of my obsessions is?
Skinny jeans. Star Wars.
I heard Star Wars, skinny jeans, Chelsea.
In that order.
In that order. Yes, those qualify. Yes. Star Wars was number one that I was thinking, although Chelsea should probably be the better option there. Yep, that's good. Do what?
Or your children.
Or my children, yeah. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
So family being the given, Jesus being the given, I'm talking about outside of those things. Star Wars was number one on my list, followed closely by cameras. Any of you like tech stuff? Like, I got a new camera recently. I really like it. I probably talked your ear off to some of you about it because I love it, and I could talk specs with you. I could talk about all the cool things I can do with it. And I got to tell you, you probably, if you've been around here for any period of time, you've heard me say this, but when I was in middle school, I started making movies with my home family camera, and they were only Star Wars movies that I made, and with sound effects and everything, because I just went, and that was the sound effects. No, it's on VHS, so I can't show you, so sorry. Actually, the very first video I made was with a buddy, and we got, have you seen that movie on Disney called Dinosaur? And it was like the 2001 or something, and it's got Aladar and the Carnotaurs, like the T-Rex with horns. Yeah, so McDonald's was giving out like those little puppets with that smelled really good. They're like the rubber puppets, they smelled good, okay? I don't know how else to say it. They just smelled really good and rubbery and weird. But they made for really good, they were very detailed. So on a camera, so stupid. We would set it on a tripod and here, come. You just got to demonstrate, just because it's that good. Lincoln, you come here for a second. Take your shoes off. Yeah. Take your shoes off. Now, put them on the ground in front of you, facing everybody else. That's important. Spread them, though, a little bit. A little more. Okay, now get on your knees with your knees going in the shoe. Okay, now hide your feet so nobody behind you can see them. And put your arms in your sleeves like a T-Rex. So we would get, there you go, yes. So we would get these little toy dinosaur puppets from McDonald's Happy Meals and put it really close to the camera, so perspective-wise it looked like Lord of the Rings. You know how they did the hobbits and to make them look short compared to everybody? It was perspective tricks. So you should watch behind the scenes of it on YouTube. It's really cool. But I told you I'm a nerd. But we would put the dinosaur, I was like 6th grade, okay? We'd put the dinosaur right up next to the camera so it looked huge. And then we'd cover him up with the dinosaur, and then we'd jump out of the way and leave the shoes. So that when we pulled the dinosaur up, the person was gone, but the shoes were there. It looked so cool, though. My demonstration doesn't do it justice, but it's like, and then we'd just move, and then disappeared. And then we would do it in like a second. It'd be like, whoosh, whoosh, and gone. It's like the TikToks where you like hold a blanket up and then drop it and you hide behind the corner and the blanket goes and it's like, oh, they disappeared. It was that, except the 6th grade version of me with the puppet. And, okay, give Lincoln a round of applause. Things that we're obsessed with, okay? I loved movies, still do. Don't watch them as much as I would like to, although I'm rewatching The Hunger Games on Hulu, and I forgot how good those movies were. I'm watching the finale tonight, as soon as we're done here. So anyway, that has nothing to do with anything other than to say, I like movies. I like to make movies. I like to watch them. I like to learn how they're made. I like all the fun stuff. And so, anyway, I'm going to go back to my sermon now, if you don't mind, if I'm not interrupting you.
Oh, because you were so on track.
Because I was so on track, okay? No, so like, sometimes it's something like Justin Bieber and it's a song and it just gets stuck in your head. But when you're obsessed with something, it kind of lodges itself in your brain and you kind of can't think of anything else, right? And when things get stuck in your brain, they can affect a lot of things, right? How many of you have been sitting in class when you're supposed to be paying attention to the very fascinating lecture the teacher's giving and you're daydreaming about anything else? What? I was daydreaming. Yeah, thanks a lot. Exactly. But when things get stuck in our brain, they affect us a lot. They can affect a lot of things. And kind of the premise of what we're talking about in this series is, because it's the love month, it's February, it's Valentine's Day month, even though Valentine's Day has already passed. Did you guys have a good Valentine's Day? Did you give Valentine's to all your classmates, like in elementary school? Z came home from preschool with a ton of chocolate, and I wanted to eat it all, but I didn't, because I'm a good dad. And so, but we're in the series. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay, I'm good. I'm just still a little parched and out of breath from that game. That's all it is. I promise I don't have COVID. So the one. Many of us have this obsession, and I speak from experience because I was once a high schooler, and there's this thing that we tend to do, and I think it's partly spurred on by our culture, but I think it's spurred on by our culture because it's a natural thing that we feel, is that we kind of focus in on people that we have crushes on, especially when we're younger, but it can happen when we're older, and you've probably seen people like that, and you're like, that's a little weird, but sometimes our culture teaches us, that you can't be complete until you find the one, right? It's like the one myth that our culture talks about a lot. There's one person in the universe for you and nobody else, and that's actually not true. So if you believe that, I'm sorry, I just popped your bubble. I took the romance out of your daydreams and your future spouse someday. But there's no such thing as the one, but many times we live as if there is the one. We're waiting for the one who's going to make us happy. We're waiting for the one who's going to make us feel complete. We're waiting for the one who just makes us feel good about ourselves all the time. And maybe if we don't admit it out loud, that's kind of how we think about it when we think about finding the one that's for us. Even if you don't believe in this cosmic, there's one person for me out there, but you just want to find the one, whoever that may be, right? We have this obsession of finding the one. And last week was the Super Bowl, so we didn't really have a whole lot of teaching that happened. But the basic premise was the point of this whole series, which is it's more important to become the one that God wants you to be, church spin, than to find the one. Okay? It's more important to become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for than finding the person that you want to complete you. Does that make sense? So becoming the one is better than finding the one. It's basically like you got to do you first before you try to add another person to that equation. And so we're talking about healthy relationships. And just so you know, this whole series is not going to be a dump on dating series where it's like, you're in high school, you shouldn't date. That's not going to be this series. The series is about all of us, hopefully, at some point, want to find someone that we date in a healthy way, that is somebody who we want to take seriously in a long-term relationship with, whether that's in high school or beyond, and whether that's already happening or not. The point is how do we approach dating as a Christian well? So that you can have healthy relationships, that they last or that they're impactful and you have fewer regrets. How do we Christian date? How do we date well while also following Jesus? And that's kind of the point and the premise of this whole thing. But the thing about obsessions is they often, when they take over your brain and get stuck in your brain and you tend to like zone out everything else because of that obsession, I'm telling you, in middle school, I would have days on end where I would sit at my computer and try to learn After Effects and like do little lightsaber effects and like, it was an obsession because I would spend all my time on it. If I wasn't watching Star Wars, I was making Star Wars. And it was an obsession. So, like, we all know that there's something about obsession that's not, like, the most healthy thing. Because, again, it takes up all our brain energy. It takes up all our time. It takes up everything else, and there's no room for anything else. And so when it comes to finding the one, or the idea, whether it's somebody you're already dating, or somebody you wish you were dating, or this idea of somebody that you wish someday to date, this one mentality can become an obsession, and it can become something that's unhealthy. So, in short, dating's not unhealthy, but it only becomes an obsession or a problem when a person or the idea of finding the one becomes an obsession. It only becomes a problem, I should say. I said that wrong. Obsession is the problem. So when we're looking for the one or the person to date or that kind of thing, whenever that person becomes the sole focus of our attention, when they can become an obsession, that's when it becomes a problem. So how do we date? Because it's natural to be excited. How many of you have ever been in or are in a relationship of some kind, a romantic relationship, a dating relationship, we're not labeling it relationship, whatever crap you guys want to call it. What you've been in I have a special friend kind of relationship. That's we only like each other kind of thing. Okay, so that was another dumb thing in middle school. Like my special friend wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend, so we were special friends, and I just made fun of it because labels are stupid. But anyway, again, not anything to do with today. I'm not bitter. So the reality is it's natural to have these like butterflies in your stomach feelings, to have this you think about them all the time. There's a season for that. You know what it's called? The honeymoon phase, which is also, the term I'm looking for is infatuation, right? Infatuation is a temporary feeling that does wear off. When something's new, I have an infatuation with my new camera right now. But in a couple months I won't anymore because it'll just be my camera and I'll want the next camera because that's just life, right? But the infatuation or the honeymoon stage lasts for a short period of time, and that's a good thing. It should. But how do you have mature, healthy relationships that don't continue that way? Because if it continues that way for longer than just like a honeymoon period, it's probably become an obsession. And so where do you kind of find the line between what's a healthy amount of time and what's an unhealthy amount of time to think or spend with somebody? So how do you know when someone or something becomes an unhealthy obsession? One indicator would be when you have somebody in your life and they're all you think about. Okay? If you have somebody in your life and they're all you think about, it might be an obsession. Or when you have somebody in your life and they're the only person you spend time with, it might be bordering on obsession. When you have somebody in your life and they're all you talk about, then that's probably an obsession. When you don't have somebody in your life, but the idea of somebody takes up all your time and energy, you're searching, waiting, and hoping to find that person, and you talk about it more than people who are actually dating, it might become an obsession for you. But sometimes, like I said, it's not a bad thing to get the butterflies, to like want to spend time with a special someone, right? That's not a bad thing. It's like the whole when it becomes the Jerry Maguire meme, the you complete me, like Tom Cruise. You've seen this, right? What?
I think you're so great.
I'm not that old. But it's actually, if I'm being honest, I haven't even seen the movie. I've just seen the clip a million times, which I imagine you guys have too. You've seen the you complete me, right? That's the famous Tom Cruise line. What? Michael Scott did it. Yeah. Yes, he did. It's this thing, this idea that we have, and I get it because it's like a compliment when you're saying to somebody like, you complete me, right? And it's kind of cheesy and corny. But deep down, especially probably you girls, I'm not going to call anybody out, but you're probably like, yes, that's so romantic and I love it. But at some point it crosses into and when especially Tom Cruise says it, like obsession-y. Like, why are you so obsessed with me? Like, like, you complete me. Bro, you should be good on your own before, right? And oftentimes our culture is like, you complete me, is the idea that we should have about relationships. Is that there's a person out there for us. And that person, we can't be whole or complete until we find the one. And that's just not going to make you happy. And it's going to damage your other relationships. There's nothing wrong about being excited about somebody in your life, but when everything else in your life seems to fade away because of a person, that's a problem. So, a little personal story. I dated on and off in high school, and every time I would date somebody, I would flirt with that line of obsession, like not usually outwardly, except my best friend who I could vent to or talk to openly about things, and he'd be like, dude, you're an idiot, stop, right? But most of the time, I did an okay job on the outside, but on the inside, it was consuming all my thoughts. It was consuming all of my energy. I was thinking about this person, whoever it was that I was with at the time. And then my senior year of high school, one of my biggest regrets in all of my high school was that the whole second semester of my senior year of high school, I stopped hanging out with my buddy on the weekends, and I just hung out with that girl every day after school, every day after practice got out, every day we'd go to a game that was going on, and then we'd hang out, and then every weekend we'd spend time together. And honestly, 3 things happened. One was I missed out. And that's what will happen when everything else fades away because of a person. You will miss out on the other friendships and the other relationships in your life. When a relationship becomes an obsession and everything else starts to fade away, you will look back and have regrets because you kind of wasted that time with someone that you may or may not be with the rest of your life. And so to look back on that season and think, wow, I really didn't take advantage of that time because I spent all my time with that person that I was with at the time, it can be a downer. So you'll potentially miss out. Or secondly, you'll alienate other people because it'll become an exclusive thing where you're together all the time and therefore your friends will just stop asking you if you want to hang out. Or it'll feel like weird if somebody third wheels with you or like wants to spend time with you but doesn't want it to be weird, but it is weird. And so you tend to alienate other people when it becomes an obsession. Or number 3, you lose yourself. So much of your identity gets tied up around being with this other person that you stop working on you. You stop growing as a person. You only grow in the direction of that other person. You don't grow towards Jesus. You don't grow towards any of your other relationships. And so those 3 things will happen when a relationship becomes an obsession. So if you start to see those flags going off in your life, then that might be an indicator that you probably need to make a few adjustments. But the goal of this series is, 1, to just talk about these things so that you can be thinking about them before you date, and 2, to talk about these things so that when you are dating, you can keep these things in mind and that you can start to be a little more self-aware than just the me and the person who completes me mindset. Because even if we don't buy into the whole one ideology that our culture tends to throw at us everywhere, you probably buy into the subtle, like watered down version of that, which is just the natural tendency to want to be in that honeymoon stage forever, where it's a new relationship, or it's this person is I'm starting to make my life plans around and all this other stuff, which isn't necessarily a bad thing unless it becomes unhealthy. And sometimes when you're in it, you can't see that it's unhealthy. And speaking from personal experience, my parents warned me about it when I was your age, but I didn't listen to my parents when I was in high school when it came to that stuff. It was like, you're old, you don't know anything about my relationships. But looking back, I'm like, wow, they were wise. I should have listened to them. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today. And in order to talk about this a little bit, I want to talk through a proverb that Solomon wrote. And it says this in chapter 25, verse 16. It says, if you find honey, not just your honey, but like honey, actual honey. Thanks for the sympathy laugh. If you find honey, eat just enough, too much of it, and you will vomit. Okay? It's that whole like too much of a good thing stops becoming a good thing. You know, like last week at the Super Bowl party when all you brought like really good food and I ate way too much of it and regretted it in the middle of the night when I woke up and felt like I was going to puke my guts out. Like, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. And that's basically what Solomon is saying here. Some of you hear that and you think, exactly, preach it, Solomon. If my friend would just stop talking about that person he's dating, then we could move on and actually have like more video game time again, right? Instead of talking about their latest, fight or whatever. And so some of us, we relate with that. Some of us were like, no, I could have all the honey in the world and I would never vomit because you can never have too much of a good thing. How many of you are like fun-loving personalities on the color personality chart? You're like yellow. Maybe you're a middle child. Maybe you don't think about the future consequences. You think of what's fun right now. How many of you are that person? It's okay to be honest. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying you have a tendency to like be caught up in the moment more than you think long term. Like this would be Chelsea. Okay, I'm a firstborn. I'm very like this sometimes. I mean, people grow, they change, and our roles have kind of switched a little bit. It's funny how life does that. But my natural tendency is to like, I need to know what's happening. I need to plan like 20 steps ahead. Her tendency is like, well, this is fun. Let's do it right now. And I'm like, but what about, and it doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. It's like, no, don't say that to me. That's not right. Like, but there's just this difference in personality sometimes. And sometimes we can tend to think, you know what, there can never be too much of a good thing. But Solomon is warning us of otherwise, that too much can, in fact, be a bad thing. And so, another way Paul starts to kind of summarize, he's not talking about dating, but he kind of adds to this idea of too much honey. He starts to add to this idea, and it's another thing that I think that we could keep in mind when it comes to dating or finding the one. And he says this in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. He says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. Okay, and this is way different than right or wrong, because dating could be right or wrong depending on the person and the person you're wanting to date, right? That's all subjective. It's all, there's no like black and white, this is wrong, you can't date this person, but that person you can. Or this is right and this is the only, we know that dating doesn't work like that. Like sometimes you don't know if it's right or wrong until you get in it for a little bit. And then you're like, okay, yeah, maybe this is not the right thing. Or maybe it's like, oh yeah, this is the right thing. The relationship progresses. But he says actually wise and unwise, which is a better contrast, because when you're trying to think, should I date or not date this person, you can't really answer that sometimes. That's why you should use your community. That's why sometimes you start dating in a not very serious way, because you want to see how it goes. But wise versus unwise talks about more like, how are you approaching things? How are you filtering your decision-making process? Does this person's values line up with my values, right? Well, one of the questions I get from students way more often than probably a lot of you realize, maybe some of you had this question, but can I date somebody that's not a Christian? If you're a Christian, you want to date a non-Christian, can I date that person? Well, I'm not going to say it's black and white, right or wrong, one way or another, but let's talk about what's wise versus unwise. Because let's play this out, like 5 steps down the road. Let's say you do end up wanting to get married, okay? Do you go to church? Do you not go to church? Do you continue to grow in your faith, or do you bring them into the faith? That's called missionary dating, by the way. It rarely works. And do you think like, or when you have kids, are you going to raise them in the church, even if the person that you end up marrying doesn't believe in God? Do you try to raise them with Christian values, or the values that they think is best based on their own personal experience? You're going to have all these different obstacles and roadblocks. You're never going to be on the same wavelength. So, long story short, probably not a wise decision to date somebody who doesn't have the same faith as you. You just won't align on your values long term. You're setting yourself up for massive heartbreak later. So, instead of thinking, is it right or is it wrong, think, is it wise or unwise? And one of the foundations of having a healthy dating life, whether you're in high school, whether you're beyond, is it wise or is it unwise? Do they tend to put other people... This is why it's so good to be friends with somebody before you date them, just statistically, there's been studies on this, like relationships born out of friendship first tend to last a little bit better and be healthier because you know the person in different contexts without trying to impress each other as a prospective dating partner, right? You get to see what they're like around their family. You get to see what they're like around other people that they care about. You get to see what they're like around people they disagree with. And you get to know the kind of character that they have before you even date them. So thinking about what's wise versus unwise, okay, how does this person treat those that he cares about? How does this person treat their family? How does this, because that's probably a pretty good indication how he'll treat his spouse someday. How does this person treat those around him that he maybe doesn't like the best, right? Thinking through those kinds of things, when it comes, are they responsible? Do they blow all their money the second they get a paycheck, or do they save some? What kind of person are they? What kind of habits do they have? And would my habits or character traits complement them? Would we, or is this just going to set us up to be frustrated later? Thinking about wise versus unwise is incredibly important. So wisdom is asking what's best. What's best? At what point does a healthy interest in someone or in the idea of dating someone become an unwise obsession? That's the fine line we try to figure out. And if that point is somewhere between interested in someone and being obsessed with someone, where am I currently? So if I were to draw an imaginary line over here that this is like, I'm interested over here, and then on this side is like a obsession, right? What are some things that would classify as I'm interested? How about following them on Instagram? Friending them on Snapchat? Relationship extension, I'm interested. Obsession, maybe following them on Instagram and then going back and liking every single post that they've ever posted within like 10 minutes and then commenting on. You guys know, you've seen this happen, right? Like obsession maybe? It feels a little weird, right? Maybe the occasional like, hi, how's it going? I'm interested in you, sticking some feelers out here. Or obsession would be waiting for you by the doors at the beginning of school. Hey, I'll walk with you to your next class. How's it going? How was your night last night? What did you eat for breakfast this morning? What do you have? Obsession, right? So like if there's interested and obsessed on both ends of a spectrum, how do you find the middle? What's the balance? So think about some of that. But Paul continues in this verse actually. He says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. And then he says, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Basically, all he's saying is this. Paul wants his readers to make the most of the time that they have on earth because it is limited. And your faith doesn't start when you graduate high school. Your faith is now. So the time that you have now is precious. And how you witness to the people that you're around now is really important. Don't forego the now by obsessing over something that is not healthy. So, basically the bottom line is don't make anyone your everything. If I were to boil that all down to one sentence, don't make anyone your everything. If your dating life is holding you back from the rest of your life, it may be time to rethink some things. Okay? Just real quick in closing, some application questions or things to think about would be, if you're currently in a relationship, don't abandon the rest of the world around you. Number 2, if you aren't dating anyone, stop thinking your life can't be good unless you start dating somebody, right? I've been there. Probably all of us have been there at some point. Number 3, trust God with the future of your relationships, okay? Don't become so obsessed that you just keep looking and looking and looking and you miss everything else because you're too busy being occupied with trying to control everything yourself rather than letting God just do his thing. Number 4, ask someone you trust if you're truly obsessed. If you don't know for sure, if maybe you've had some flags, but then maybe there's more good that outweighs the bad. If you don't know, then maybe ask somebody that you trust. Because again, oftentimes when we're in it, we can't see it for ourselves. And so ask someone that you trust. So don't make anyone your everything. And that is the first step to having really healthy dating relationships. Relationships that thrive. Relationships that, like, your friends like being around you as a couple. The relationships where They make you a better person. You guys build each other up more than you tear each other down. The kind of person that points you towards Jesus more when you're around them. Seek out those relationships with wisdom. And don't make anyone your everything.